biggest game on everybody's radar, including College Game Day. They will be there in Tuscaloosa on Saturday night when number 11 Texas goes to number 3 Alabama. The Crimson Tide are 7-point favorites. You can watch this in prime time, 7 p.m. on ABC. Trey, let's start with you. I mean, Texas has what seems to be an elite defense. Alabama answered some questions last week when they started Jalen Milroe, and listen, he looked fine, right? He threw for almost 200 yards through the air. His legs were especially dangerous. I'm really interested to see how the quarterback battle shakes out. Quinn Ewers didn't wow us last week. Jalen Milroe maybe silenced some of the critics. Do you find that this game comes down to the arms of Milroe and Ewers, or are you looking at a different position battle?
The quarterback battle is always going to be, right at the center of everybody's attention. I don't know that it's going to come down to the arm of Milroe because I don't know that Alabama is going to let him be in that situation, right? It will come down to the arm of Quinn Ewers because that's how Sark and company have chosen to run their offense. And quite frankly, they struggled to run the ball at times last week against Rice. It did not look pretty for a good portion of that game. Now, they turned it on in the second half. They looked like they flipped a switch at halftime and they got some things figured out. So credit to them for that. But it wasn't an opener that I think most Longhorn fans are excited about going into this week against Tuscaloosa, or again in Tuscaloosa against Alabama. I don't think that, your average Longhorn fan is more confident after that game against Rice than they were before. So it's going to be fascinating to see. The other thing that I'm really watching is, this game was so much closer than anybody expected last year. I think the line was like 21 points or something crazy like that. Alabama barely escapes on a last-second field goal, but we're going to see a completely different offensive scheme, a completely different offensive strategy than we did last year in Austin from the Crimson Tide. Obviously, a quarterback with a different skill set with Jalen Milroe instead of Bryce Young. So it's going to be fascinating to me to watch. It's going to be a really interesting chess match between Nick Saban, between Tommy Rees, and between Steve Sarkisian. I don't know. It's going to be a really exciting game to watch. I think it's going to be a really close one for about 3 quarters. To me right now, I just have to see it to believe it with the Longhorns under Sark. I really haven't seen, in a close game, in one that's coming down to the wire, we just haven't seen them take control of a game that is kind of hanging in the balance, right? It's either been, a close one that they let slip away, or it's been one that they dominate from start to finish. We haven't seen them really take control of a game that's hanging in the balance late. And we've seen Nick Saban do that for, almost 20 years now, right? If he hasn't put a team away already, he's going to take control in the fourth quarter, and Alabama's just going to Alabama. So for me, I need to see it to believe it for Sark. I've seen it a million times with Saban. So I think this is a close one for about 3 quarters. In the fourth quarter, we just see Alabama be Alabama. And I think they pull away in the fourth and barely cover. So I'm taking Alabama minus the 7. But I think it's going to be a fantastic football game. I think it's going to be a really fun one to watch for the entirety of it.
Garrett, this is a game that's going to be the most polarizing topic, no matter which way you slice week 2, right? Because coming into it, this is the best matchup on paper. Coming out of the weekend, regardless of what the result is, I think you're going to have the sky is falling for one team and, oh my gosh, a national championship is in reach for the other. What are kind of your keys to victory for each team in this game?
Right. So for me, going into this matchup, I was already watching the quarterback play in the offseason and saying one of the big reasons I was, kind of on the fence about this one in the offseason had to do with the quarterbacks, right? It had to do with the fact that we didn't know who Bama was going to trot out there. And if it was Milroe, we hadn't seen anything consistent from him, really kind of struggled with some of the arm talent in some of the games he saw last year. And then Quinn apparently was going to make this step. I've, since day one with Quinn, said that when he gets pressured, he struggles. His feet aren't very good. He kind of gets flat-footed, just stands around in the pocket, which does affect his deep ball accuracy. It does affect, kind of how he ends up handling the pressure when it ratchets up. And guys, after this last weekend, I think we're moving in different directions there. I think Jalen Milroe looked a lot better than I expected him to. Made some really good throws down the field. Now, it was inconsistent. There were some underthrows, and against Texas, those will get picked. But Quinn is not taking the step that I think most people expected him to take. And it sure seems like he's struggling with some of the deep ball, maybe not commanding the offense. And guys, I think the message boards kind of have this one pegged pretty well. The message boards in the Texas Longhorn sort of sphere, have been panicking the last couple days. You've seen them talking about how Malik Murphy should be the starting quarterback because he's got the physicality and the something else. You've seen them talking about how they looked over at Texas A&M and Connor Wigman and how they picked the wrong quarterback. I've seen it all on those message boards. And is it overreacting? Yeah, of course it is. That's week one. But I said this was going to be a Quinn Ewers legacy game going into it, and I'm going to stand by that. He needs to succeed in this game. The big issue here for me is not going to be the Texas receivers against DBs. It's not going to be the anything that has to do with the Texas defense. Can they stop Alabama? For me, I'm looking at the Texas offensive line. If the Texas offensive line can keep the pass rush off of Quinn, then I think Texas has a real chance here to go into Tuscaloosa and do something big. But without probably your lead running back, there's concerns that Baxter even play in this game. Without him to keep things even, if you can't establish the run behind that offensive line, if you can't keep the pass rush off Quinn and he gets a little happy feet, guys, this is not going to be a close game. If you have to ask me what's going to happen, do I believe in Alabama's defense getting pressure or Texas's offensive line keeping the pressure off him? I'm going to go with Bama on this one. I'm picking Bama -7. I think they pull away late. I do think it's close at halftime, but I just think it's too much for Alabama. Maybe the offensive line totally shocks us and keeps Alabama off. I believe too much in them being able to scheme up blitzes, scheme up different coverages and different looks, and just getting in Quinn's head from the word go.
I'm going to take Texas plus the 7 points. I talked about this over on the Ledger earlier when we were recording, and I think Texas has a really good shot in this for a couple of reasons. Number one, half of Texas's staff is very familiar with Alabama. They're former Crimson Tide coaches, right? Garrett, you just talked about the offensive line. Kyle Flood knows what to expect from a pass rush standpoint. He's used to prepping against it every day in practice when he was in Tuscaloosa, right? Kelvin Banks leads a very veteran Texas offensive line who did a fairly solid job protecting Quinn a week ago. In fact, I wasn't really concerned with Quinn's pocket presence. I was concerned with his downfield accuracy. Secondly, I look at the front seven for Texas. Their pass rush and their linebackers' ability to not only defend the run, but also play pass coverage. I mean, heck, Jalen Ford had 4 interceptions last year, led the Big 12 in that mark for linebackers. He picked off another one on Saturday. I really believe that this is the year that Texas says we're tough enough, we're physical enough, and we can compete with the big boys on a week in, week out basis. My question isn't if Texas is tough enough. I believe they are. My question is, do they know how to win in the biggest moments? And that's something I can't ask or answer right now. It's a question that I've been asking myself all week when I'm trying to decide, do I sit on the fence? Do I take Texas plus the points, or do I go with tried and true Alabama at home? But I think that Texas can keep this within a 1-score margin because of the things I've already said. Plus, Garrett, as you mentioned, this is a legacy game for Quinn Ewers. If he doesn't rise to the occasion here, if he throws a dud in Tuscaloosa, the temperature only gets turned up on his seat. The calls for Arch Manning, Malik Murphy only get louder. We've been told since this kid was in high school, he is the next coming. He was one of only 3 quarterbacks in the modern recruiting era to earn a 1,000 rating. It's time to put up or shut up and back up that rating and prove that he can have a moment on the highest stage. I'm inclined to believe that not just Quinn, but the team around him finally rises to an occasion and at least makes this interesting. I don't know if Texas is going to get it done in Tuscaloosa. In fact, I find it harder to believe that after they couldn't put Rice away. But we don't draw conclusions through the end of the season after week 1. That's what Twitter is for, right? That's what certain personalities on 4-letter networks are for. We inform and we project, but we don't draw just indefinite conclusions. And I think for Texas to be, kind of pushed out of the equation here would probably be an incorrect assumption. I'm going to take Texas plus the 7. I'm going to give myself 2 of the outcomes. The victory for the Longhorns, which I think would be a statement victory, something they need to do to get to the playoff. And also I'm going to allow them to cover that spread. This is going to be a fascinating game, guys. I mean, this could be a short game as well. We could be talking about 7-8 possessions for each team if the running game gets going. That's Alabama's bread and butter. We'll see what Texas can trot out there. Jonathan Brooks, Jaden Blue, if Cedric Baxter isn't able to go. Do you think the Longhorns can cover this? +7, or are you rolling with the Tide? Trey, you've got a comment.
Yeah, I was just going to say, we've talked about a Quinn Ewers legacy game a lot. This is a Steve Sarkisian legacy game for me more than anything. I think that he has this one circled. I think the fan base has this one circled. They're, of course, going into the SEC next year. It's a preview of what they're going to get week in and week out. Obviously, they're not going to face a team the caliber of Alabama every week in the SEC. But look, it's going to turn a lot of heads in a positive direction if he can win this one, if he can steal it. There's going to be a lot of questions asked if he can't get this done this week against a vulnerable Alabama team.
Gracious him. How about